Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. Last night I made something for dinner that is beautiful and sounds difficult and very special. And it is very special, but it is not difficult. Here are the ingredients. Please pause and write them down. And hey, while you're paused, give us a thumbs up. And if you like our channel, subscribe. And you'll be notified when I post new videos twice a week. Now let's make chicken saltimbocca alla Romano. And you know, this is so much less complicated than the title. There's chicken thighs, there's prosciutto, here's a little flour, I've got garlic powder and salt. I'm not using pepper because I'm using sage, which is kind of a spicy herb that adds so much flavor, and I don't think I need the pepper. You can add it if you like, it won't hurt a thing. I'll also use a little butter, a little chicken broth, and no wine, so I'm using just a little bit of red wine vinegar. So the first thing we're going to do is pound out these chicken thighs, and I'm using chicken thighs. You can use breast. Your process would be a little bit different with breast, but you would still pound them out, and you'd want to start with like a half a breast because we want to get this pretty thin because it cooks quickly. The I guess most traditional way to make saltimbocca is with veal, but I don't buy veal. I don't eat veal, but if you want to make it with veal, this is the way you do it. You pound it out. You can also do it with pork, and it's yummy, made with a pork tenderloin. And I'm beating this pretty thin because we're going to fold it, and we want it to cook still quickly. Now, if you were using a chicken breast, you probably wouldn't fold it. You would just stick everything together with a toothpick, with the chicken and the sage and the prosciutto, but I like it better folded, and with a chicken thigh, that's about your only option. So I have this fresh sage here, picked it out of my yard, and I'm going to sprinkle on first a little salt and garlic powder, and I'm only doing this on the inside because I'm going to wrap the outside with the salty prosciutto. And I'm working with chicken, so I have on gloves, and if you'll notice, I got everything together before I started, so that I don't have to be opening things. I'm going to get about 3 or 4 leaves of this sage and spread them out in here. They won't stay spread out. I'm going to roll them up. But we want enough here to infuse the sage flavor throughout. And then I'm going to fold it. I'm going to fold the sage inside the chicken. And then I'll get my prosciutto. The prosciutto is an Italian ham, and when you buy it, it comes in these tiny, very thin slices, and it's a little fragile. You have to be careful with it, and it's very expensive. So, you know, I have to confess, I have done this with bacon. 2 pieces of bacon, rolled it around and around, but the recipe calls for prosciutto, so that's what we're using. And you just fold it over, wrap it around, and that'll hold everything together. You could stick a toothpick in it if you feel the need to, but it's going to stay together. Now that's all there is to it. I'll do the rest of them, and then I'll be back. So here are all 4 of them ready to go. I'm going to meet you at the stove. Now I have my little bit of flour here. I actually have way more than I needed. That's a half a cup. You could have just used 1/4 of a cup. And we're going to bread it lightly, dredge it. And I'm going to brush all the extra off. This is just going to help it brown nicely and help thicken our sauce just a little bit. Here's my Griswold 10-inch skillet. I love this skillet. And I have just enough oil to cover the bottom of the pan. And I'm going to place these in. And we're going to fry them. This is medium heat. don't get it too hot. This is, even though we pounded it out, it's still kind of thick from the folding, and we want it to get done all the way through and be golden brown and not burned, plus done in the middle. So I'll get all 4 of these in, and I'm looking at this and thinking I need a little more oil. I didn't put enough in. I'm using grapeseed oil, by the way. I don't use olive oil for this because it kind of scorches. Olive oil is just not really great for frying. And I'll let that heat up just a little. And I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes. You can watch it if you'd rather, but I know from experience that in my pan at this heat, it's going to take about 5 minutes to get the first side browned. And after 5 minutes, we're going to check it just to make sure that it didn't stick. When it's done, it'll let go. And yes, we've got the nice browning started on that side. I'll flip them all 4. If your too much oil is cooked away, you can add a little bit. And when I get them turned, I'm going to cook them on the second side for 10 minutes. I'll set my timer. I'm going to give you a little close-up of this to let you see how pretty that is. That prosciutto is caramelizing with the flour. It's just lovely. So after 10 minutes, we're going to give it another flip. And you'll want to check your time in your pan and your stove. Mine works with 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then 5 more. And then we check the temperature. Some folks do 3 or 4 minutes per side and then put it in the oven to finish. I like this results better. And these are already looking very beautiful. And the smell is out of this world. So let's stick our thermometer in. It's been 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 5 minutes. And we should be at about 165 degrees. That's our goal. And I think we're right on the money. So that everything inside is done. We don't want any raw chicken. Now I'm going to take these up and I'm going to start on the sauce. So in this pan are all kinds of little bits of the prosciutto and a little bit of the chicken. And it's just beautiful. We want to use all that. So I'm going to cook this down in a sauce with butter. And lots of folks use wine at this point. I don't use wine. So I'm going to put the butter in and let it melt. And then I'm going to add just a tiny, tiny little bit of flour. About a teaspoonful of flour, not much at all. And I'm going to stir that all in and let it brown for a bit. I want to let it really cook off the pasty flavor of the flour. And now, this is a sauce. It's not a gravy. So don't be expecting gravy here. It's not going to thicken up much. That was just enough flour so that when we're done, it'll stick to the meat. Now, if you were using wine, you would have put in about a 1/4 cup of wine and let it cook together with this and let most of the alcohol cook off, and then a 1/2 cup of broth. I'm using 2/3 cup about of broth. And I'm adding that in. I'm going to let it cook together just a little bit. Now you do need the little tiny bit of sourness that you get from the wine. Sorry, you heard my puppy telling me it's time for a treat. So I'm adding in about a teaspoonful and a half of red wine vinegar. You could use lemon juice. I like the flavor of red wine vinegar and I don't have any fresh lemons. So I'm just going to stir that in. Now we're going to let this sit here and simmer, I don't know, 5 minutes or so to let it cook down a little bit, let all the flavors meld. I've got some pasta cooking over here. When that's done, I'm going to plate this up. This is just some spaghetti with a little garlic and butter and a tiny bit of Romano cheese, all stirred in together. I'm going to add the Saltimbocca, which by the way means jumps in your mouth. And it can jump in my mouth here in just a minute. And then I'll spoon a little of this sauce over the top. And you know, the sauce is just wonderful. Let me put it over the nice pasta there too. Get that flavor all through it. And I'm going to garnish with a few little sprinkles of this Romano cheese that I grated up freshly to go in the pasta. And then maybe I'll add a couple of sage leaves. This is a dish that deserves a little extra garnish, a little extra effort to make it pretty. But it doesn't need much really, because it's just gorgeous on its own. That wonderful prosciutto has caramelized. It's crispy. It's tasty. The chicken is tender and juicy. It jumps in your mouth. Thank you for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. Hope to see you again tomorrow.